Hi folks, Professor Dipley, this is History 100, Chapter 9, lecture video 4, the last one for this chapter. So where we left off last time, we were talking about the life of peasants and how it revolved around agricultural work and their holidays in the, as you can see, throughout the year, but really a lot of them were in the fall and winter. So women here, women held a difficult position in society, regardless of their station in life. Obviously, and this is usually true, women of the upper classes usually had a little bit more freedom and ability, to have a better life. But most were, and especially the peasant women and others, confined to the household tasks such as cooking, baking bread, sewing, weaving, spinning, helping out with some of the farm work. But others did, and this is always going to pay us. There are some that are going to hunt. There are some that are going to fight in battles, used weapons to defend their homes and castles. It's a mixed bag, but again, a very difficult position for most women. Did not have the freedom that men enjoyed. So looking at the peasant homes, as you can see here, peasant homes in general were pretty bad. Mostly shacks. I mean, you can see the top one on the right here. It looks like a barn, as does the bottom one. And you can see the little interior, very Spartan. Rarely more than one or two rooms. They were thatched, easily destroyed. Very small quarters. People often shared beds. As you can see, there's a table. That's about it. That is used for everything. Very little light gets in. As you can see, sometimes they have windows, others don't, because, it just makes it easier for people to get in. And so these, as you can even see, there's chickens inside the home. People often brought those inside for protection of the animals and also body warmth and things like that. So these were not up to the sanitary conditions as we have today. Peasant diet was also largely bread, and that's going to be true for a while. Most of their diet was around bread and grains, including turning some of the grains into alcohol, beer, things like that to help it keep for longer. They would have some vegetables, some dairy products, and some pork. But meat was at least at this point scarce. That was definitely not a big part of their food and their meals. They might have some wild game birds and things like that, but the hunting was not always allowed because a lot of the hunting, this was viewed as the Lord's game. The Lords had control over the food, the wild animals there. At least that's a theory. I mean, that kind of still is. If a wild animal is on your property, it is yours, in so much that you can hunt it. I can't come onto your property and hunt it. On your property there, but again, it is mostly bread. It's funny, if you actually were to go, if we had a time machine, we were able to go back. Everybody would have large pot bellies, and even if they were skinny everywhere else, and that is a product of eating all this bread and other foods like that. Peasant possessions, very few actual possessions, mostly utensils. One was a trencher. It's a wooden plank used as a cutting board and as a family plate. That was one of their main ones. They'd have maybe a one long wooden spoon shared by the whole household. Again, remember, you have to make all this yourself. It's not like they can just pop down to the store and buy these things. A knife. This was used as a tool and a cutting tool in the home. There's no forks yet. So this is, one of their more prized possessions. Metal spits and hooks were definitely one of their few metal possessions, and these were often passed down. The metal spits, I think, if you ever seen a grocery store where they do like the rotisserie chicken, something like that, something you can put it on, hang stuff off of. These are one of the few metal possessions, because these are very expensive. You have to be made custom by a blacksmith, that sort of thing. One of their most important family possessions was the family chest. This was used to store their possessions. It had to be, the size of it, so that it could be carried away or buried in case of attack. It could also be double as a bench or a table inside the home. But again, they have maybe one or suit of clothes. That's about it. Maybe a few trinkets, but very, very few in terms of possessions as we would understand them. Here's another view of a peasant home inside. You can see the animals inside there. They have very rudimentary sort of stools to sit on. You can see the family chest in the background there. This would be something for spinning and weaving their clothes, but again, yeah, very unsanitary, especially by our modern standards. So a question often is how did people deal with this? Why did they accept this, that they were, in such a poor social position? Well, there's two ways, and we're going to look at one here and then in the next slide the other, of ways of understanding social hierarchy. This first one here, the Great Chain of Being, is a much more religious one, a religious understanding. This was taught as that under this concept, the entire universe is ranked in order, from God at the top to angels, monarchs, all the way down, even rocks. I mean, this system is where we get like the idea of a lion as king of the jungle, that sort of thing. Because this was created by God, it was really believed that this people would then follow it, and it gave them a sense of place and importance, and that they had been put there by God. It was also less likely people would revolt against the hierarchy since it was created by God. So that's a more religious one. A more secular idea here is the body politic. Society is described as a human body. Everybody's got a part to play in it. Each part is deemed essential to the whole, even if each part was unequal. So it describes everybody has a role to play, and this is where they should be. And many people did at least go along with this in that sense there. And so that's one way they were able to keep people along with this. So just going back, this was up in an earlier part of the slides, but I will also revisit it here. There's more info. Also, of course, watch the videos regarding these, especially the Vikings. You can see the Viking expansion and settlement. These are the Danes from what would be the Danish today, Denmark today. Scandinavians began to move into Russia. At the same time, they begin to move into Western Europe, especially into northern France, where they become the Northmen, the Normans, and eventually they will create their own land in Normandy in North France, and especially after King Rollo, one of the Viking leaders, converts to Christianity. They're able to set up their own state and sort of integrate in there. They also go into England, where you get the Danegeld. This was a tax that after they conquered parts of it, the local leaders paid to the Vikings. And you had the Danelaw. That was the area where they were, the Danish Vikings were in control. That's going to change under King Alfred the Great of England, who was able to push back and get rid of much of the Danish, the Viking rule there. Muslim conquest here, we're talking more in southern Europe, especially in Sicily, and there. You also get Magyar raids, and another group coming into Eastern Europe that begin to really drive a wedge between the Byzantines and Eastern Europe, the Slavic peoples. They are eventually defeated at the Battle of Lechfeld by King Otto, which then creates the Ottonian line of kings there in Germany. Eventually, the Magyars, what they're going to do is they're going to adopt agriculture rather than a sort of semi-nomadic group, and they will settle in what is, say, essentially Hungary today. There are other places in Italy. It's a little different. There you had more urban centers, so those cities are going to become city-states and more or less continue. Why do you have more cities in southern Europe? Really from the Romans. This is what I was talking about, Alfred of Wessex. That's Alfred the Great of England, where they were able to roll back Viking Danish rule. Eventually, they start to strengthen the royal power. They start creating administrative units for tax and other purposes like shires and hundreds. And there's more in the notes. In France, you get a new rule here, a new dynasty, getting rid of the Carolingians, the Capetian dynasty led by Hugh Capet. This is going to end Carolingian rule. Capet's rule at first, this is going to last for hundreds of years. Capet's rule at first, it really only is around Paris, but they have all these Castellans that work with them as well. Eventually, the French rulers will grow in much, much greater strength here. This again, looking at some of the from King Alfred and England there. This is in France. You can see where the Capetian kings had most of their power at first, and that will go. Other places, again, in Central Europe, Ottonian power in Germany, you can see they begin to form as a much more powerful dynasty here, even though it will slowly fall in the future. But one of the things they do is they also take control over the church. They appoint bishops and get the pope, at least try, to sign off on it. And you're going to start getting more parts of this area that become increasingly more Catholic in Bohemia, which is more or less the Czech Republic, say, Poland, Hungary, and so you can begin to see the spread of the religion in that area. And again, there's more in the text than in the notes here on that. Here's just some more Otto receiving gifts from these different leaders there. Another depiction of King Otto there, and you can see how these tied religion in with his royal power. And so this is what the map looks like of Europe and the areas we've been studying at this time. You got the German kingdom, which is really made up of small little principalities as well, but you get an idea of how much this has changed. In many ways, this is still a continuance of the original barbarian invasions of the Roman Empire. So that is where we end for this week. Of course, you got any questions, just email me and let me know. All right.